Hello and welcome to the Race Dilemma podcast. My name is Drew Hawley and I'm here with my brother and co-host Daniel Sloan. This podcast is really about giving a voice to those people of a mixed heritage, initially within our own family whose racial background is not always obvious due to their pale skin colour, and have found themselves to be at the centre of a personal race dilemma, and at times having to prove their ethnic credentials in order to be heard.
And of course we have broadened the conversation out into the many corners of some of the so-called problems of being from a racially mixed background. And if you feel you may want to contribute or have a story to tell and would like to be featured on an episode, please reach out to us on the Race Dilemma podcast at gmail.com. And if you really like these episodes, please rate us and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and feel free to share with your family and friends. Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of the Race Dilemma podcast. Today we have a lady called Caroline Dyer. She was introduced to our podcast by a mutual friend. She listened to our podcast, became interested, reached out to us because she thought she may have a story to tell. She describes herself as married, a mother, a grandmother, and a retired financial manager. Welcome, Caroline.
Oh, hi guys. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. Caroline, when we was having our preliminary chat, you described your ethnicity as one of mixed heritage, of a white mum and a Caribbean father. Is that right? Caribbean, you think?
Right.
Caribbean. But the story for you has a little bit of an edge to it because you were given up for adoption at quite a young age, I think a couple of months old or something.
Yeah, at 9 months old.
9 months old.
Yeah.
But your birth mother knew your adoptive mother. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Can you start us off from that point? Can you just sort of expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, my mother was Welsh and she came to London to work and fell pregnant. And back in those days, she went into a mother and baby home. And the family that adopted me used to take the mothers from the mother and baby home and sort of take them into their home until they got on their feet, and whether, they'd either decide to keep their babies or get them adopted or fostered. And that's how my adoptive parents found me. That's how I came to be adopted by them.
Were they doing work in that sort of field? Were they?
I don't really know. I think they just made some sort of connection with the home, and I think because they had quite a large home and there was just the two of them, they didn't have any children of their own. I think it was just something that they wanted to do, but I never really sort of asked them why they did it or how they come to do it. I guess it was just fate, otherwise they wouldn't have got me.
That's right. So you were 9 months old when you went under their roof, and it took a couple of years for them to legally adopt you.
Yeah, well, I actually went under their roof very early on, I think only about 6 weeks old, but it took that period of time for my biological mother to decide what she wanted to do with me.
And where did biological mother go? Did she just leave the scene?
She ended up moving to America with her sister, who had emigrated to America.
And what about biological father? Was he not on the scene at all then?
No, we didn't know anything about him. However, my adoptive parents said that he did track me down and visit one day, but my parents weren't in and he didn't sort of come back. So that didn't really go any further.
We'll come back to him a bit later on, if that's all right.
I wanted to jump in with a question, if I may.
Yeah.
Do you remember like the first sort of conversations that you had with your parents, your adoptive parents, about your racial background? Can you tell us about that?
They sort of, obviously they knew about my Welsh mother, and they didn't know very much about, because she obviously didn't tell them very much about my father, but they did sort of tell me from a very young age, I mean a toddler, as soon as I can remember, that they explained that they went to the hospital and saw lots of babies in their bassinets, and they went along and said, not that one, and then they said, we saw you, and we said, that's the one we want. And that's sort of what they told me at a very young age. And then obviously as I grew up, because they were white and I was black, it's sort of, you know, I don't think they ever sort of sat me down, but I always knew that I was adopted. So I knew that they weren't my biological parents, but they were the best parents that somebody could have had, because they had unconditional love, you know.
That's nice. You absolutely loved them as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, when they explained to you about going to the hospital, I mean, as children, I think we just accept things. We just get on with it, don't we? When parents say to their children, well, in your case, they took you to the hospital, they said they went to the hospital and they saw somebody, not that one. Oh, that's the one we want. That's the little girl that we're looking for. And you were comfortable with that. That was fine with you, was it? That's
I just sort of accepted that. I didn't really sort of question it, really.
Because you felt loved.
By the time I went to school, my parents were very, you know, they'd come up to school, and I don't remember at junior school or infant school anybody really saying much to me to make me feel that I was sort of different to anybody else by having parents that were a different colour to me.
So there wasn't a time, let's say in primary school, when did you become aware of your own mixed heritage? Did you think about it in that way, or just you knew you were adopted, you knew you were dark skinned?
Yeah. I don't think at infant school, and I don't really remember at junior school. I think I remember when, although I was brought up in East Dulwich and I had various friends, but I think when I went to things like youth clubs and brownies, there wasn't that many black children around. So you did feel that you was sort of a minority, but I don't remember feeling that anybody said anything racially derogatory to me at
it
that
didn't
age.
feel like an issue sort of thing.
No, not at all.
That's
and
nice.
I had, because I was an only child, my parents were very much welcoming. There was always a house full of friends, and there was lots going on in the house. It was a very lively, sort of bubbly house. It wasn't a quiet house.
You mentioned yesterday, Caroline, in our preliminary chat, you mentioned about them getting some stick from the neighbours.
Yeah. I mean, when they adopted me, their neighbours that had previously spoke to them and were friendly with them sort of just became unfriendly and didn't talk to them. And their reasons, some of them, their reasons were, you know, you could have adopted a white child. Why did you adopt a black child? So that was obviously a racial issue for the neighbours. And they sort of said it wasn't important to them. They did what they wanted to do, and they was happy with their situation. If it meant that the neighbours wasn't going to talk to them, then they weren't friends in the first place. So
it's pretty liberal of your parents in those days, Caroline, wasn't it? It's pretty out there, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, and they were like that.
But when you looked at it, and sorry, it's just delving a little bit deeper, just out of curiosity, as a child, did you think, speaking personally, I don't even think I noticed the colour of my own skin. I didn't notice it. I didn't notice it on family members either. They were just my uncle, my aunt, my grandma, whoever. And I certainly didn't notice it on myself. But because let's say that you were made to feel aware of it because you were a little bit different to your mum, or you were different to your mum and dad. Did you ever ask, where does my dad come from? Whereabouts in the world is he from? Or do you know?
Not as a young child. I don't remember ever having that conversation. As I grew up, I mean, my adopted dad died when I was 5, so my mum sort of brought me up on her own from the age of 5. And she would often, as I got to maybe 8, 9, 10, say, do you want me to find, do you want me to find your biological mother, and should we try and find your father? And I used to sort of say, no, I'm happy. I'm not interested in finding them. And she was sort of more sort of conscious of trying to find my mixed heritage and my biological parents than I was. And I was never interested in finding them.
Why do you think Mum wanted to find that out?
She was quite a drama queen, my mum. I think she would have quite liked the drama of it all, maybe. And I think she also, she's not around anymore, but I think she probably felt, because she was a very caring and nurturing person, I think she probably felt that certainly to have found my mother, my biological mother, that it may have given her some sort of comfort.
Oh, really?
I think she sort of felt that, to give a child away, because she used to say to me, actually, on every birthday and Christmas, my biological mother's name, she used to say she must be thinking of you on these days, certainly birthdays and Christmas.
Yeah.
And so I think she sort of, and because she met her and she got to know her, I think it was a really unusual sort of situation.
Oh, she met her and got to know her, did she?
Yeah, well, when she took me in as a baby,
I see.
Obviously, my biological mother went to work, and my adoptive parents, before they adopted me, used to look after me while she went to work.
Did they keep in touch with her then?
No, once she went to America, they didn't keep in touch with her directly, but unbeknown to my biological mother, my maternal grandmother actually met me, and she came and sort of found me because she wanted to see her grandchild.
How old would you have been then?
I was a baby.
Right.
I was a baby, quite young, under a year. And my biological mother never, ever knew that had happened until I met her many years later.
That's interesting, isn't it? That's interesting.
Yeah.
In one of our conversations that we had, you mentioned maybe some issues of racism growing up, but then the race dilemma, so to speak, extends to other members of your family, including your own husband. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, the race dilemma, as I've just explained, for my parents, were the fact that so-called friends had turned their back on them because of me and my colour. And my husband also experienced that because he's white, he's English, and he's worked in very male-orientated workplaces, and he would experience people saying very racist things in front of him, but because he's white, they assumed that it didn't affect him at all. And then sometimes he would say, I've got a black wife and mixed race children. And sometimes I think behind his back, people would say, you don't realise, but Gary's wife's black. That's, not really acceptable. Just because there was a group of white men sitting around a table, it doesn't mean that they haven't got family that are of colour.
I'm sure they must have torn him up inside, Caroline. That must have been
awful. Does, and he still talks about it now.
It's so hurtful, so hurtful.
Because he's actually said to me, he remembers certain conversations, and he says, I wish I'd have said something then. And I said, well, everything with hindsight, there's lots of situations I've been in up until only a few years ago, shocking things that I've been so sort of taken aback that by the time I've wanted to say something, the moment's sort of gone.
Yeah, by the time you process it, it's finished.
Yeah.
It has gone.
Yeah.
And it takes... It's difficult to think on your feet sometimes because I think we've probably all been in that situation. Someone says something and you're so taken aback by it. You're just lost for words. And as you say, the moment's gone, isn't it? You can't retrieve it. It's just gone into the ether, and you're left with it.
But it still hurts you.
Oh, for sure. Oh,
yeah.
I mean, I think about, shame on me. I think about stuff that happened 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think, why didn't I say something, But I didn't have the word. I didn't have the vocabulary then. I didn't have the nous. I was inexperienced, whatever. You don't. But, and people just... I mean, we've spoken about this before as well. Thinking about your husband, Gary, you work with people who you assume have a little bit of respect for you, who assume that they're your friend or you're their friend, and someone says something, and that's horrible. That's horrible.
He had a lot of that.
Yeah, that's the worst kind, and it just rears its head. Unbeknownst to you, people are thinking in a certain way, and that's very real, actually, isn't it? That's very real. You know, if people just say things without thinking, you know how deep that stuff goes. Awful.
And you've got grown-up children, correct?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Have they experienced any kind of dilemmas themselves?
It's funny because I was talking to Gary about this the other day, and my daughter said something to me, my youngest daughter, the other day, that I was quite shocked about. I don't probably want to say what that is because I haven't got her approval. But it then made me think, I've never really sat down with them and asked them how they feel about their colour or if they've experienced. I know actually that there has been few issues, but I don't remember when they was at school having them come home and say anything that I felt I had to go to the school and deal with. I had been to the school to deal with things, but it was never around race. It was about other things.
Yeah. Was that secondary school?
Secondary school.
No.
Yeah.
But not race.
Yeah, but not race. And I think after this, I probably will sit down. I think they'll listen to this, and I probably will talk to them, and they may even want to come on here and give you their story, and I might be shocked about what they say.
They would be more than welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you didn't experience any racism as such up until about the age of 11. When you went to when you went to secondary school, it became more. Yeah,
secondary school. I think it was very early on, as first week, where kids try to decide where they sit in the sort of hierarchy of the year. And I had there was white kids, there was black kids, there wasn't so many mixed race kids, and I was very small for my age. I mean, I'm small now. I was really small then, and I did start to get picked on by one. I think she was a mixed race girl, actually, and I just tried to sort of dodge things. That would be my sort of go-to. I didn't want to be bullied. I didn't really care what group of people I had to be with, because I'd always sort of grown up with very, very varied mixes of
I understand,
racial people around me.
Yeah.
And I don't know really, I can't even say now. I was friends with lots of people, and it's funny because the school was very, very large, 1,800 children. And my mum would come up to pick me up from school, and she would find me, and I'd say, how did you find me? And she'd say, I just asked them, and she'd say my maiden name and ask where Caroline and my maiden name was, and they say, she's over there. And I said, but these people don't know me, Mum. And she said, well, they knew, told me where to find you. So, I mean, whether I was, I don't know, known for being mixed race, or the mixed race girl with the older white mum that's a bit feisty, I don't know. I never know, really. But
because I went to school. I went to school in Stockwell. And it was only a couple of miles down the road, and yet there were loads of mixed race kids in my school. Loads.
Really?
Yeah, loads. Really? I can remember. Yeah, girls and boys. black kids.
No.
A real mix.
Yeah.
Not so many Asians, I might add. Not so many Asians. But definitely in that area where I grew up, lots of Jamaican kids, lots of Irish kids. I always say that.
We had the Irish and white kids. We had black kids, but not. I think the mixed race children were more of a minority back then. I mean, that was the beginning of the 70s.
Yeah.
71. Yeah.
Yeah, they were in a minority. In fact, I've got some stories about my mixed race mates. Some of the stuff that they had to deal with because they were, the shame that their mothers felt, hiding them and calling them different names, or didn't call them names that were too black, if you like. It's kind of a bit of a shame attached to it there.
Yeah.
I just want to take you back, Caroline, just a little bit. I just wanted to. You mentioned yesterday. I just wanted to take you back to the journey of looking for your biological father. What you did. What did you do to find him? How did you?
It was really as a result of the girls, my daughters, as they were growing up, and they would say, "Where does our dark skin come from?
Right.
Where is our paternal grandfather from?" And I said, I don't know. I've never tried to find out. And I then did a couple of things. So I contacted the local authority for my adoption file. That took a good couple of years for them to hunt that down. And when I got it, it was very, a couple of sheets of A4 paper in it that did give me his name. So I then went online and I put his name and asked if anybody on the World Wide Web knew of this man. And a couple of years went by, and out of the blue, I got an email from a young woman that was sort of nearly half my age saying, "I think I know who you're looking for. He's my father." So it was sort of put me in a spot because I didn't expect that to happen. I suppose I was a bit naive. And then I made contact with this woman and her mother, and they told me their story. And they asked for a photograph of me, and I sent it to them. And they was convinced that he was my father because they said that I looked like him. And then they told me their story, and basically he'd fathered this 20-year-old, and they said he'd also had a child with a woman in England. They didn't know about me, but they said he was now back in the Caribbean, and the last they'd heard of him that he'd got prostate cancer. So I'm assuming that was many years ago, so I'm assuming now he's probably not around, but I'm not 100% sure that was him, and I probably will never know.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you, or out of 100, how close do you think you were that was him?
I think out of 100, I reckon it was about an 80% chance it was him. Right. And funnily enough, his son, I found out the name of his son that he fathered in the UK, and I found a Facebook page with a guy with the name, and he looked very much like me with mixed race. And I would have loved to have contacted him, but obviously, you just can't go and step in. All these programs on television where they show these long lost families, it doesn't actually always work out. So I didn't want to jump into somebody's life and possibly ruin it for them.
Hey,
but it
I'm
was
your
just
sister.
it's not really appropriate, isn't it?
It's interesting you say that, Caroline, because in a future episode we're going to do one on DNA results.
Oh, right.
And what it's revealed for us both. Andrew's going to do his, I've done mine, and we're going to do an episode on the results, and it sounds kind of very similar to what you're saying. I just want, given that let's just assume that it was him. You say 80% chance. How do you feel about your ethnic background, knowing that Dad could have come from, or your father, sorry, could have come from the Caribbean? How do you feel about that?
I sort of think at the time, because it was my two daughters wanted to know more, I wish I could have found out more than I did. I did my best. Once I told them that this is where I think he was from, and they were old enough to understand, they were teenagers, so they understood. And they seemed quite happy with that amount of information. They didn't say, well, we want you to delve more, and we want this, and we want to go to those places and try and seek him out. So I didn't. I left it at that, and they seemed, especially my youngest daughter, seemed really happy, so much so that when I said about coming on here, I messaged her and I said, oh, Liv, where was my biological father from? Because I remembered one half of him, because he was Guadeloupe one half and Grenada the other, but I couldn't remember the Grenada bit. And she straight away came back with the answer. So it had obviously sort of sunk in
of course.
with her, you know, and it's presumably given them that understanding that they're possibly partly from the Caribbean.
They probably don't want you to delve any deeper, because they themselves, they don't want you to get upset. They're comfortable with Mum and Dad, you and Gary as you are. You're good parents. You had a good home for them.
Yeah.
And, why should anything upset their apple cart or your apple cart? As long as you're all right, they're all right,
Yeah, yeah.
And they can see that, can't they? And they obviously have great care and love for you, and they don't want you to see you upset.
Yeah.
And again, we'll expand on this in a later episode about DNA results and what it does, or what it could mean to other members of the family, and can of worms and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
you know.
Sure.
So you feel okay about your ethnic background?
Very much so.
If you, it seems. We were talking about this earlier as well. I do jump in, Andrew.
Yeah, that's all right. I do have another question, but go on.
I was just going to say that when we've spoken to members of our family and amongst ourselves, our race dilemma is, I don't think it was so much of we knew where we came from, but the race dilemma for us really was where we fitted in, how we fitted into. Will we ever fit in? Is there a place for us? Do we feel comfortable? Is that sort of thing along those lines? I don't think, and listening to you, your story centres mostly on, of course, it would, the fact that you were adopted and you had this paternal father and maternal mother over there somewhere, but your mum and dad were the family that looked after you and cared for you and loved you.
Yeah.
And so you don't have that kind of dilemma as such, because you know, which is good. Yeah. And whatever mum and dad did for you, it's left you quite secure, I think, if I'm reading you right.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as much as I think even if I'd have been brought up by my biological parents, I don't think I would have been a hugely different person. I'd have had different experiences, and I'd probably have had a wider sort of family unit because my parents are both dead now and I was the only child, so I haven't got any siblings. Not any that I'm 100% sure of anyway. But I feel sort of comfortable in my own skin. Yeah. Racism, in my opinion, is still rife. And I have debates with people about that. I've got mixed race friends whose father's white and her mother's from Jamaica, and we talk together and we have very similar sort of stories about how we're treated by people in the big wide world.
I remember a story you were telling me about, telling us about, to do with why you didn't get a particular job. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was very young, probably about 19, and I saw a job advertised for working for a black adoption agency. So I thought, oh, well, I've got the skills for the job and I'm adopted and I'm black. And I went for the job and I was grilled for at least 2 hours,
Wow.
but not about my ability for the job, but it was, the bottom line was that they felt that a mixed race or black child couldn't be adopted by white people and come out the other end as a sort of normal, in inverted commas, person. And I said, well, I can't say I'm normal, but I think I'm as normal as the next person. And I didn't get the job, which was really a shame, because I think, they'd made this assumption that,
I think you could have brought a lot to their table, I think.
Yeah, so. And I think it was probably a bit short-sighted, and whether that would happen in the 21st century, I don't know.
If you were grilled for 2 hours, it sounds to me that they were trying to find chinks in your armour. They were trying to
Well, it was like a psychological assessment, and sort of, I can imagine they probably did that with their clients that wanted to adopt children, so they had the skills to be able to do that. But yeah, they could have been trying to find a chink in my armour, but I didn't get the job, so that was the thing that was upsetting.
Well, it's their loss.
Yeah,
their loss.
Yeah, but yeah, very strange, and it still sticks with me because it's many, many years ago, but I'll never forget that.
You've probably got lots of stories, Caroline. There's probably lots you could contribute
lots
to.
Of stories.
I'm getting that sense from you. I'm getting that sense that you've experienced quite a lot. Your friends have experienced a lot.
Yeah.
You've grew up in South London like we did.
Yeah.
And there has to be stories there. There has to be experiences. And I wish we had another hour or 40 minutes to do that.
But maybe we can do a part 2,
I wanted to ask you, Caroline, where do you think, if at all, you fit in to any particular racial group? I was going to ask you how you see yourself, where you think you fit.
Yeah, I mean, I see myself as a black woman. I don't think certain black groups would consider me so, because now, just recently, there's now this sort of white, brown and black, you know, so some people will see me as brown, but I've not felt comfortable with that term for me, because I think we spent so many years growing, when I was growing up, to not say that I was brown. That was a sort of not a positive. The positive was to say I was black. So, and I think you can't just switch from one thing to another depending on the what's
the situation
at the time, So yeah. And if I had £1 for everybody, Gary actually reminded me of this. So if I go to work or I meet new people that are white, they'll say to me often, after getting to know me, I don't think of you as black.
God, here it comes.
And I think, and you've heard it a lot, yeah. And then sometimes, depending on my mood, I might say, yeah, and I don't think of you as fat, or and it's just, because I just think, well, that's just such a derogatory thing to say to and disrespectful to somebody. I think less so now, but it's less now. But
it's kind of dismissing that part of you, isn't it?
Yeah, like, what's wrong with me? Yeah, so what? And
I am who I am.
Yeah. Oh, I've had some awful. I've had quite a. I've been mistaken as a cleaner in my own house by people, and been asked if I was a drug dealer. I mean, honestly,
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Sounds like a part 2 coming up.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a part 2.
So many shocking things.
No, we want to thank you for sharing this stuff with us, your story with us. It's your story, and we appreciate it. And just to ask you as well, Caroline, how have you felt talking to us this evening about this stuff?
Great, yeah. I mean, it's sort of, I mean, I feel fine because I don't feel emotional about these things anymore. It's all in the past, and but it's sort of when you're talking, you know, when I was talking to Gary about it, and he'd come up with something that I'd forgotten about. Oh yeah, do you remember that? And oh yeah, you know. And there's so many stories.
For sure, we got them as well.
Yeah.
You know, and you sort of start remembering things that you didn't remember, you know, it all comes to the front.
Every time we have a conversation about it, we come up with something. There's always something there, you know. So Caroline, thank you for joining us on the Race Dilemma podcast.
Thanks, guys, and thank you for having me.
More than welcome. See you soon. Thanks for joining us on today's episode. If you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe on your favourite directory. And if you've liked it even more, then please rate us and leave a review on Apple Podcasts.
Again, if you would like to be featured on the Race Dilemma podcast, please reach out to us on theracedilemmapodcast@gmail.com. That's it from us, and we'll see you on the next episode.